So I did this presentation last year. It's casting common mistakes, casting errors, and the cures, and how do you fix it. So bait casting is really easy. Trust me, if I can do it, any of you certainly can. And there's some just basic fundamentals that we need to have to make the cast work. If we screw up any of those, the cast doesn't work as well as it should. So I'm going to go over some real basics and how to self-diagnose your casting errors. So let's talk the first one. Let's talk tempo. Tempo for beginning casters, intermediate casters is a tough one because you don't know what a good tempo is, right? You've never done this. Maybe no one's really talking about tempo. You get out on the water and you're like, I'm gonna spey cast, right? You're kind of pumped up. You're pretty stoked. Maybe you're fresh out of the gym. You're working on your diet, right? You're getting strong. Things are going well. Look at snap. Lion tamer, right? No, that's the wrong way to do it. The great thing about spey casting is we can take our time. We have a nice, collected, well thought out tempo. We don't need to use all our muscles. You know, those forward squats and those cleans and jerks and all that stuff you're working on in CrossFit, leave that in the gym. Spey casting, it's all about fun. You wanna take your time. So a good tempo, you measure a good tempo of your cast based on typically the speed of the water. So like right here where I'm at, it's pretty slow, right? I can take my time to execute the cast. Oh God, this is rocking me. I can take my time. So, a double spey. I set my anchor, I come around, I'm not in any rush, I make the cast, okay? So let's think about, if I get out slightly deeper, don't crash, the current speeds up, right? Now since the speed of the water is quicker, what do I need to do? Increase my tempo, right? So, look a little quicker, off I go. Why? So the question becomes, why do I want to adjust my tempo? Because we always want to maintain our anchor point in the right position. Okay, so think about that. In slow water, when I set my anchor right there, it's floating away at a slow speed. I can take my time to make the cast. Whereas when I get into faster water, that anchor is starting to move away from me quicker, right? So that becomes important when, say, we have a strong upstream wind, I need to go off my left shoulder, right? I want to make sure that my tempo is right, so I don't hit myself like I just did. Does that make sense? So measuring your tempo based on water speed is really, really important. Okay, so don't be the CrossFit line tamer guys. Oh, I kind of went out there. You don't need to do that. Take your time, breathe, measure the speed of the water, and then adjust your tempo accordingly. Next casting cure or ailment I see is the dip. The dip is a really common little error that people have. And the dip is when get this down screen. The dip is when I set my anchor point, like I did right there, and I'm sweeping around. And instead of having a nice clean sweep all the way around to my D loop, we dip. And the dip is here. And then we make our cast. Okay? Boy, look at that. That's why you want to have good tempo, right? Because it really got screwed up. The dip, when you set your anchor point and you come around and you dip, you take all the power or all the momentum that you were just generating in the cast and you dipped it into the water.
Is that the same as a poke?
What's that?
Is that the same as a poke?
Poke is, it's like a poke, but it's an unintentional poke, okay? And it's basically, wow, this is really screwed up. I'm just gonna pass it. So, I'm gonna show you an intentional poke, and I'll show you an unintentional dip. So this is a clean cast right here. Everything's set up, cast comes off nice, right? A dip, which takes the power out of your D-stroke, looks like this. I come around, I dip, come around here. See how I'm dragging? I can kind of force it out there, but I don't have clean energy flowing to my dip. An intentional dump cast would be I dump, come around really collectively and thoughtfully to make the cast happen. Does that make sense? Is that clear? So the dip, you want to make sure that when you're swiveling into your D-stroke, that you have a nice straight plane on your tip, all the way around. So one way to help do that, sir, what's your name?
Mike.
Mike? Imagine I'm going to take a pie, okay? And I'm going to take a pie and I'm going to throw it in Mike's face. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But if I take my pie and I go like this, I'm going to throw it, the pie just slips off my hand, right? But if I take that pie plate, I come around thoughtfully, and I throw it. Chances are I'm going to hit Mike, right? So the dip can be cured by imagining my top hand, okay? The top hand has that pie plate. I set my anchor point, I come around, and I make the cast. Does that make sense? So my top hand is doing this nice big sweep. Another analogy that you can use that really helps with that clean and even rod swing or sweep all the way around is, imagine, who likes martinis? Anybody like martini? I'm a vodka martini guy. Imagine I'm a giant martini glass, okay? I mean, I'm talking big. And I need to trace the martini rim with my spey rod all the way around. Does that make sense? So, whether I'm doing a snap T or a double spey, whatever the case is, my rod tip touches the top of the martini glass, traces it all the way around, comes forward, and I make the cast. Okay? By thinking, okay, there's an issue with my cast, I am doing what? I'm dipping. What do I want to do? I want to throw a pie in Mike's face, or I want to be a giant martini glass. And the thought is, remember, raise the rod tip up, that rod tip sweeps all the way around the martini glass, bottom hand pull. The other analogy, if you don't like either one of those two, this is one of my favorites, because I like hats. Imagine I have a giant sombrero on. I'm not talking sombrero like that. I'm talking like 15-foot sombrero, right? And I want to trace the rim of the sombrero with my rod tip all the way around, okay? And what I would tell you, as beginning casters or intermediate casters or even good casters, sometimes we forget that we need to live in that three-dimensional world, right? Because as single-hand casters, what were we told to do? You know, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you know, don't do any sidearm stuff, right, unless you absolutely need to, but live in this, you know, two-dimensional plane. Spey casting, we have the ability to live in three, right? So adding a little swivel to your life is a good thing. So, the dip. The other thing I see, and the dip and cutting the corner are very, very similar. So cutting the corner looks like this. Everything downstream. So cutting the corner. So the cutting the corner, I set my anchor point really nicely, and I come around and I go straight into my gear. Okay? And then I kind of hear this slurping sound typically back there. I'm usually cutting the corner and dropping the rod tip they live together in the bad habit category. So I set my anchor, I come around. It doesn't feel right, but also I can hear this, like, as Simon Gosworth would say, I hear this Frenchman slurping soup behind me. I hear that from the line, right? Okay. When you hear the Frenchman slurping soup, it typically means you're dropping your back cast, okay? And the back cast dropping typically lives in the same home as cutting the corner. So again, we go, okay, I know what I'm doing wrong. What's my fix? My fix can be being the martini glass, throwing a pie in Mike's face, or Eric's favorite, wearing just a freaking obnoxiously big, sombrero while I'm spey casting. So, we have bad tempo, we know what to do that there, slow down, cutting the corner, dropping our back cast, we know what to do there. What else do I see often? Oh yeah, this is the other one. And this is because we're all single-handers. We get into spey casting, and we know how to do this really well, right? We're all pro single-hand casters. We want to move into the world of spey because it's fun. So when we're driving our spey rod, we don't want to push with our top hand. That's a major error. Why is that a major error? Because the power of these spey rods comes from right here, the butt section. I'll do a shameless plug. I sell Winston rods. Okay, we put boron in the butt section of these rods. The reason why we do that is because you fight fish from the butt section, and your most powerful part of the cast comes off the bottom of the rod or the butt section. So if you are just pushing with your top hand, you're not utilizing your rod's power, the best part of the rod, to create the most amount of power. So if I find myself getting a really good case of spey shoulder, and you'll know you have spey shoulder is, you're fishing, man, everything's great. You're out there, you're hooking it out there, you're fishing, you're swinging, you're mending. Maybe you're catching, maybe you're not. But you get into the truck and you're like, damn, is there a bottle of Advil around here? Because my shoulder hurts. Like really bad. Like maybe masseuse tomorrow, right? Definitely some whiskey in a little bit when I'm not driving. That's spey shoulder. That is an indicator that you are pushing and pulling the spey rod with the top hand too much. Push. Looks good, but it's going to wear you out. So how do we fix that? How do we fix that ailment? Well, we drive the rod off our bottom hand, okay? So the power application is your top hand, 20%, bottom hand, 80%. And what you can do is hold the rod like this, or like the OK sign. This is a good way to do it. But hold the rod just like that. So it's forcing you to drive off the bottom hand, okay? So I'm going to show you, in terms of good tempo, if the rod is balanced and you're using the right amount of bottom hand, I'm just going to hold the rod as lightly as I can with my two fingers on the top. I'm not doing this to show off, but to give you an idea that the whole thing is done off the bottom hand, okay? So don't overpower it with the top hand. Use your bottom hand. If you find yourself getting a case of spey shoulder-itis, Advil, the next time we go to the river, what do we use? Our bottom hand, okay? So let's talk about swinging a fly real quick, okay? Since we kind of went through a lot of that. Heidi was really good when she talked about casting 70 degrees. Let's talk about actually fishing one of these, right? Because that's kind of the important part, right? And you hear people refer to, I'm totally changing track here because I feel like everyone's got a good grasp of their ailments. Let's talk about swinging a fly. Let's talk about mending, and let's talk about what you'll hear people talk about, swimming the fly. Because the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to go to the river and know how to cast. And then now we just go into kind of blank mind mode. Or what I call hope strategy. Hoping that a fish bites it, right? Because I will tell you this, and I am not a wise man, but hope is not a good strategy. You need to be thinking about what you're doing. You need to be reading the water. You need to be going, why am I being successful or I'm not? And a big part of that is what your fly is doing in the water, okay? Is it fishing the way we want to? So one thing we can do is we can swing a fly, and we can adjust the speed of the swing. So if I put a big downstream mend in here, and I pull it tight, okay, I am putting more pressure on the line because of the current, and as a result of that, I'm speeding up the fly, okay? Sometimes that's a really good thing. Maybe you're in a position where you know the fish are in front of me, but the current is really, really slow, right? And if I go out there, and I do what a lot of people do, they go out there, they huck it out there as far as they can. There's this thing called just mend and hope, okay? In slow water, that mend and the hope is going to do one thing. It's going to put your fly in the bottom of the river, probably going to get hung up. So knowing that I can put a downstream mend into my line to create the line speed, to speed up, the fly speeds up. So what about the upstream mend that I just made fun of? The upstream mend is really, really important as well. And the upstream mend is your most common mend, and it's the one you'll use the most. And the mend is really used for one application. And that's for your sink tip. Right here, right? We painlessly decided which one we were going to use, right? The mend is what allows that sink tip to start to sink into the water column without any tension, okay? And that's the key. We want our fly, and we want the sink tip to sink without any tension on it. Just sinking, okay? That's where we're going to get our depth acquisition. So I'm going to throw it out there, throw a big mend on it. A little bit of slack right here, a little bit of slack. I might even follow it. Now you can see right there it goes under tension. So if I'm trying to get fairly deep, I might cast at a 90-degree angle. Tuck it out there, make a big mend. My fly is sinking, 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 sinking. I'm following with my rod tip, sinking, sinking, sinking. Watch it, there it goes under tension right there. Okay? Now I'm fishing. Now I'm going to get a grab. Oh, did you hear that? So knowing that is really important because we might want to adjust our depth via the sink tip, but we can also adjust our depth via the angle in which we're setting up our cast. So, knowing that my 70-degree cast, okay, knowing that maybe my 70-degree cast, okay, if I throw a mend, slow sink, okay, I'm under tension right there. Knowing that that's only going to get me down so much. I go to my 90-degree cast, right? Take a quick one. Speed cast, not looking very good. Get it out there. Big mend. Okay, sinking, 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 sinking. Okay, I'm under tension. Great. If I want to get even deeper, what do? I go more upstream. Now, can you do that? Yeah, sure you can. Why not? There's no rules. When we go slightly upstream, big mend. Now I'm sinking, 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 sinking. I'm going to get hung up for sure. I'm under tension. Okay. So understanding where you're placing the fly, how you're allowing the sink to get down, based on the water that you're fishing, and at least giving it your best shot to figure out, is a far better strategy than doing what? Popping it out there, from poking. Okay? Play back. You're gonna have a lot more success. I promise. One other thing in terms of mending. So the other thing that upstream mends can do is they can slow your swing down. Okay. So if I hook it out there and I make my mend, if I grab the line and it's tight and I hold it upstream, I am slowing the swing down. I'm holding it, I'm holding it, I'm holding it. This is really important. So again, you're looking at a piece of water that you're fishing. You know the fish are in, let's say, this particular zone. The flow of the river is maybe blowing that fly out quicker than you would like. You can make that upstream mend. You can hold that fly against the current to keep it in that zone longer, okay? So that's something you can do. And I guess one of the things that if you want to really see how mending affects, your fly, not that you do this a lot in Alaska, but it would be a good lesson is put like a mouse on or put a skater on and go ahead and just see when you put a downstream mend how much quicker it speeds your fly up. Or do an upstream mend and just watch how it dead drifts till it's at your 70 or 90, whatever the degree you are, and how quickly at that point it goes under tension. Because it will give you kind of a visual aid in terms of what the fly is doing. And just imagine what the fly is doing subsurface is similar to what the fly is doing on the surface. Does that make sense? Let's talk about the eat a little bit too. Heidi mentioned it, and I don't want to be repetitious, but she brought up some really good points in the eat. Like, there's two schools of thought, okay? One school of thought is to leave a loop, okay? Or drop a loop, okay? And this is really popular if you go to Oregon, Washington, D.C., you're fishing summer steelhead. This is a very popular method in which to fish. And the way this works is I hook it out there. I have a loop, okay? I have a loop. When the fish starts to eat my fly and I feel it, I drop the loop, okay? And that dropping of the loop allows the fish to have it in his mouth and hopefully turn. And by the time that loop comes tight, you got the fish on it, okay? The other reason people really, really like dropping the loop is because, a lot of reason people like to use the loop drop, is because if the fish is eating the fly subtly, and he grabs the fly and he releases it, that moment in time, when you drop the loop, if he takes the fly and he releases it, he never got pricked. He never felt the hook. So a lot of summer steelheaders don't necessarily want to prick the fly, or they want to hook the fish, they don't want to prick the fish. Does that make sense? Because the other way to do it is swing the fly, get the line tight. Okay? So now you're fishing. The line is tight. The nice thing about this technique is, man, you can feel everything. When that fish starts to eat, you're feeling it big time. Even if it's just a little pluck or he freight trains the shit out of it and he's tail walking down the river. Either way, you're going to feel it. The one thing, if you're going to go tight to it, and this is key, is when you feel that fish start to eat, you want to hear the, you hear that? That's why guys like reels like this. It's quick. The fish is eating it, they're eating it, it's going, you set the hook and the fish is on, okay? So, two ways to do it. You can drop the loop, you can keep it tight. What I would tell you for king salmon fishing, and I've done a lot of king fishing with a two-hander, I personally like keeping it tight because those fish are aggressive, they're big, they're willing to eat the fly. They're not particularly, when they want it, they commit to it. They're not being shy about it. They're eating the shit out of it. You feel it. You just gotta let them eat it. Or steelhead fishing, the loop thing particularly, you know, or you're fishing in a place, maybe it's the shoots, for example, and there's a lot of people, the fish are maybe getting hooked, or they're getting some looks. Dropping the loop can be a good idea because they don't feel the prick if they're just kind of mouthing the fly. Questions on any of that? All make kind of some sense?
Yep.
Okay. I got 5 minutes here. Anything that anybody wants to see? Any question anybody has?
You mentioned, you know, ways to get the fly a little bit deeper in the water by casting more at 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Big bend upriver. What about stripping some line out? Any value in that?
Yeah, that's a great comment. Yeah, you can do that. The problem with it, everyone heard the question? So the question was, in terms of getting your fly deeper and mending, can you just pull line off the reel and kind of throw a line at it, correct?
Essentially. It's still a big mend, but letting some more line go to get it down.
And that works. That works. What I would tell you is, if you're throwing line at it and or kind of feeding line to it, a lot of times the fly is floating for an extended period of time when you're completely out of contact with it. And that's the danger of the big mend or casting upriver, is so often the fish will eat the fly as it's on the dead drift. So you somewhat want to limit that fly under dead drift because you have no contact with it. They can eat. But this is a really good technique, and a lot of guys will do this, which kind of comes to your point. So Heidi again mentioned walk, right? Cast, step. Don't be a potted plant, okay? You don't know where the fish are in this run, and if they're not eating it right here, take a step because maybe they're down there, right? So we start at the top of the run and we work that.
That's what you do.
So what you can do is, I'm only going to work and walk down. I throw my big mend, and now I'm somewhat have some connection with it, and I'll walk down my 3 steps. Now I'll put the line under tension, and I'm in my swing, okay? So instead of throwing line at it, you're actually walking with it under dead drift, but you somewhat have some control of the fly still, because the straight cast is going to fish best. So if you throw a beautiful, laser beam out there, man, that thing is just perfectly straight. If you walk with it, you'll keep that straight, consistent cast. So when it does go under tension, you're going to feel it. The worst cast that we can throw, and the worst cast that we can fish, is the cast that is not the straight line cast, that has some weirdness to it, right? We don't like that cast. We want that cast to be arrow straight, because we want to be able to feel the most subtle of take, right? So walking with it is a great way to get more depth and still stay in contact with the fly. Fantastic question. Anybody else? Questions, sir?
Could you make a comment of
preference between a tube fly and or shank fly? And so I'll throw a shank fly with lead eyes on there too, okay? Is that fair?
Sure.
Yeah. So, and this is just my personal opinion. I wouldn't say I have any science based on this, but personally, I would tell you, I like to fish a fly that's as unweighted as it can be, okay? And using my sink tip or my sink tip strategies to get the fly to have some depth or acquisition, versus a shank fly that's a heavy shank, typically with some type of lead eye. The reason why I personally like the tube fly or the lightly weighted fly is I feel with a leader, that fly has the ability to really dance and kind of use the currents, use the marabou, use the rabbit that's really breathing in the water, versus a fly that's kind of heavy and not having that that motion, that action. I also personally like the way a tube fly casts. They're lighter weight, they're easier to get out of the water. When I find myself in froggier water and I go to set my cast up, they're easier to bring to the surface, they're easy to clear the surface tension and get it out there. So I feel from a fishing perspective, the lighter weight or the lighter the fly is, a lot of times the better. You know, there's a fly called a Skagit minnow, which is a forgotten fly at this point. It was caught by a guy by the name of Mike Kinney, who was a big Skagit angler. He was one of the guys that really, truly invented Skagit casting, shorter heads. But the Skagit minnow was this articulated marabou fly that had no weight on it. And God knows how many steelhead the Skagit minnow has hung. I mean, it's a phenomenal fly. And I do feel that fly selection and fly choice sometimes is subject to what the fad of the day is, right? And while I think shank flies are awesome and big, heavy lead eyes kind of from a theory perspective is great because it's getting the fly down, but we have all this great new line technology. Now we have, you know, triple density lines, the Fist or the Rio Game Changer. I mean, these lines are designed to cast really nicely and really get your fly to the depth that you're intending. And having a lighter weight fly that is easier to clear the water and put fundamentally fishes in the water cleanly is important. So, long-winded question too.
Thank you.
I like the tube fly. Yeah. Any others? I think I'm done, right? Thank you all. Appreciate it.